Last year, I took the Mini 2 SE to Jordan and was really impressed with the quality that it offered for such an inexpensive drone. When I got back from my trip, I also picked up the Mini 3 because of a few key features that the Mini 2 SE lacked. In today's video, we'll compare the two and figure out which is right for you. I've broken today's comparison into categories, and just so you know, I have some Mini 2 SE and Mini 3 photos and videos, just some raw files that you can download in the description below if you want to play around with it and compare it yourself. The first category I want to talk about is video, and I use both these drones mostly for video. The Mini 2 SE shoots 2.7K up to 30 frames per second, whereas the Mini 3 shoots 4K up to 30 frames per second. So for some people, that's going to be a deal breaker. Other people, 2.7 is going to be just fine. Another key video feature difference is the fact that the Mini 3 can actually go between vertical and horizontal footage. So if you're shooting stuff for social media and you don't want to have to deal with cropping and get the best possible image out of it, then yeah, the Mini 3 is probably best bet if you do a lot of vertical video. Another big one is SDR versus HDR footage. So HDR stands for high dynamic range, and you only get HDR footage in the Mini 3, whereas the Mini 2 SE, still great footage, but you don't get the best quality in the highlights and the shadows, specifically when it's like at sunset times. So just bear that in mind. If you want the best possible video quality, you're gonna have to go with the Mini 3. One of the biggest advantages for the Mini 3 for me is the low light capabilities. So if you do shoot a lot in low light, maybe at sunrise and sunset, this is going to be best for you to pick up the Mini 3. Why? Because it has a lower aperture on it, and it also has something called dual native ISO. So it has the best possible clean image at 100 ISO, just like the Mini 2 SE would. But when you stop it up to ISO 500, it's gonna reset itself and you're gonna get that really clean image again. So all that noise is gonna go away at 500, and then the noise will start building from 500 up. So you get a really clean image even at 800 ISO. Really quick, if you could remember to like this video, it goes a really long way in helping my channel get noticed. And also, I'm giving away next month a free coaching call with me for 30 minutes. You can ask me any questions you want. You just have to tell me what I can help with in the comment section below. Let's dive back in. The Mini 3 also has a bigger sensor than the Mini 2 SE, and that's really good for low light conditions as well. The bigger sensor that you have on a camera just allows in more light and you get better quality in those situations. Two last things about video. Both of these do quick shots, but you actually get an additional quick shot mode, which is called Asteroid, which you can kind of make the world look like a tiny little planet, and that's kind of fun. So you only get that on the Mini 3. And lastly, the Mini 3 shoots in faster bit rates, and if you don't know what bit rates are, they just allow for better quality in certain parts of the image. An example would be something like moving ocean water. When that's moving, you don't get as much like distortion and things like that, so you do get a better overall image out of the Mini 3. Next, let's talk about photography, and we kind of touched on the advantages a little bit when we talked about video, but the biggest one is having a bigger sensor size on the Mini 3. You also get better low light in photo as well because of the f1.7 aperture. You don't, however, get the dual native ISO, so it doesn't reset ISO quality at 500 for photography. That only happens for video. Both of these drones shoot at 12 megapixels and in a raw format, so that'll come in as a DNG, and essentially what you can do with that is you have a lot more editing flexibility in a program like Lightroom to kind of make the photo your own. So I really do like having raw photos. And lastly, just that sensor again, switching from horizontal to vertical. It's actually just really nice to be able to shoot in vertical, import it into Lightroom, not have to do any cropping or playing around with it. And if you like having stuff for like your Instagram stories and things like that in the aspect ratio of 9:16, then that does help a ton. Category number 3 is probably one of my favorites, and we're gonna talk about this RC remote. So you now have the ability to use this controller if you're flying with the Mini 3. Now you can't use this controller if you own the Mini 2 SE and you just go and buy it. It's not actually going to pair. So with this controller, it's more than just the screen. The thumbsticks are better. You get a photo and video button. It just like, it feels better in the hand, and it also has custom buttons on the back. So anyways, that's why I absolutely love this controller. Not to say that the RC N1 has really anything wrong with it. To be honest, it's a little bit more compact. If anything, it's simple, easy to use. I've been using it for years, and I just think that if you do want to save money, you're on a bit of a budget, it's not necessary to go with the controller with the screen, but I personally enjoy that. Next, let's talk battery life, and both of these drones have amazing battery life. So let's start first with the Mini 2 SE. You get 31 minutes rated flight time out of it. Because the drone returns to home around 20%, obviously you're not going to get the full 31 minutes. You can manually control it and keep it for a little bit longer, but at some point you're going to want to bring it home. Now, the Mini 3 has two options for battery, which is quite interesting. So the runtime or rated time is 38 minutes on the Mini 3, so you get 7 minutes longer battery life, which is actually substantial, and I have noticed it in flight. But if you do want to get the Plus battery, it's actually rated for 51 minutes, which is absolutely insane. Just be mindful that your drone is no longer 249 grams or the sub 250, so you don't need a license to fly here in Canada. So by adding that Plus battery, you actually make it heavier. Next, let's talk about price of these two drones, and they're very, very affordable, so that is good for us. So let's start with the 2 SE. It's often on sale for $279 American, and that does come with controller. If you want to pick up the Mini 3, you have two options. Number one, you can pick it up for $419 US, or if you did want that controller like we mentioned with the screen on it, it often goes on sale for $549 US. Next, let's talk about range of these two drones, and this is actually where they're super similar. So they both utilize the OcuSync 2 and are rated for 10 kilometers of range. Now you might be asking, well, they're different controllers. Does one offer a better signal? Well, unfortunately not. So for the Mini 3, I was expecting a higher rated range out of it because of that new controller, but I think the antenna system and everything is actually identical. So just know that if you're buying the Mini 2 SE, you're not missing out on any extra range out of the Mini 3. Next, let's talk a little bit about the use case of these drones. I always say on my channel that the Mini series isn't the best for wind conditions, like really heavy wind conditions. So if you often find yourself in those conditions, I would highly recommend upgrading to something like the Air. But I will say that both of these drones are rated for 38 kilometer winds, which is actually not bad. But in heavy conditions, like I do worry sometimes about this Mini series of drone. Okay, what about obstacle avoidance sensors on these drones? It's exactly the same. They don't have side sensors, so you need to be really careful when flying sideways, especially if you're a beginner, because so many of my friends have crashed that way. I will say, however, the Mini 3 Pro does offer new sensors that would help you if you're a beginner. However, it's not really a beginner friendly budget for the Mini 3 Pro, so just be mindful of all of that. And the last point that I wanted to go over was the Mini 3 is noticeably better in build quality, specifically the latch for the battery on the back. It also has just like a new design that looks pretty cool, and I have noticed at times like the Mini 2 SE just feels a little flimsy. That being said, I just like threw it around in my bag. I traveled with it for 2 straight weeks to Greece and Jordan. It just sat in a sock in my bag, so it was thrown around in my bag a lot. So I guess it was a little battle tested, and other than some bumps and bruises, it's intact. Before we get to the verdict, I just really wanted to show you this. So if you're a beginner filmmaker and you're wanting more cinematic looking footage out of your drone, here are 3 things you can do to upgrade or level up your drone footage. So hopefully you noticed the difference in those 2 clips, and that was the Mini 2 SE footage, just Rec 709 straight out of camera. And then what I did is I kind of made it like more filmic or make it look like a movie using 3 tools from today's sponsor, Artlist. So the first tool that I used was LUTs. It's a great way to give your footage a more filmic style, even if you only have Rec 709 color and your drone isn't able to shoot log like both of these. Just dial back the percentage a little bit, as sometimes it can look a little bit oversaturated and gross looking. Tool number 2 is a title pack that I just went to their website and downloaded. So it gave me a bunch of different titles to choose from, but essentially that just gives your footage a little bit more of a filmic look, and it offers context to what the video is going to be about. And the last tool that I used in the second clip was music. So a little cinematic ambient music will always help your viewer engage more with your footage, and I like like to choose a song before I edit. It just gives me like a visualization in my head of kind of how it's gonna look, so that's worked well for me. You can use all of these tools and more with just one subscription to Artlist, and if you sign up with my link below, you get 2 free months off an annual subscription. Even the cricket sound effects that I use were from Artlist, but anyways, let's get back to the video. So it's finally time for the verdict. Which of these 2 drones should you pick up, the Mini 2 SE or the Mini 3? Well, I would say it depends. If you absolutely need to have 4K and you shoot a lot in low light and you need a 50+ minute battery, plus you want the option of having a controller with a screen in it, well, I'd say just save the extra money and pick up the Mini 3. However, if this is your first drone ever, I see nothing wrong with the Mini 2 SE. I see it being like a really good value option. And yeah, you don't get like a few of the bells and whistles and everything, but 2.7K video is still great. You saw the footage from Jordan. It looks beautiful, and that from a $279 drone is absolutely insane. If the Mini 2 SE is still too expensive, there is a cheaper option, and I highly recommend checking it. I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for checking out the video, and we will see you in the next one.